met a horse named Upload. He was slow, couldn't cross a stream without buffering. Then Ting rode in on a unicorn made of lasers and perfectly symmetrical speeds. No saddle, just confidence. Ting said, honest, fast fiber. No contracts, no surprise fees. And handed me a shiny metaphor to drive the point home.
Winter is coming. Make sure your car is ready with Carry Car Care. Family owned and operated, they'll keep you safe on the road all season long. Give us a call at 919-380-0040 to schedule your winter service today, or visit us at carrycarcare.com. Carry Car Care. It must be right, or we'll make it right.
Hi there, and welcome to What's Up Wake.
Spend your day is the only way. Take a break with What's Up Wake. Ooh, What's Up Wake.
Presented by the publishers of Carry Magazine, Wake Living, and Main and Broad, What's Up Wake covers the people, places, restaurants, and events, essentially all the cool stuff and great news of Wake County. I'm your host, Melissa Wistahuff. Join me as we find out what's up Wake. This month, we've been talking about New Year's resolutions for 2026, along the lines of health, fitness, and traveling. Now it's time to talk about how to pay for those goals. I've brought in someone who knows how to keep your financial wins from disappearing faster than your holiday bonus. Today, I'm joined by someone who will talk about smarter saving habits, intentional spending, and how to make 2026 the year your wallet breathes a sigh of relief. Here with advice you can take to the bank is Joe Mecca from Coastal Federal Credit Union. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you about a subject that doesn't seem very exciting, but we're going to try to make it a little exciting. First, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first and foremost, big money nerd. So I've been working in Coastal Credit Union for just over 20 years and have just learned a ton about personal finance and things that I can apply in my own life and love sharing that with other people.
Great. That's exactly what we're going to do today. You have come with kind of a top 5 list of tips for really how to set our new year off to a good start in terms of our finances. So let's start with tip number 1, which is have a budget.
And this is critical. This is absolutely key to everything. You want to really understand the importance of where your money's coming from, where your money's going. And the start of the year is a great time to do that. Take a look at all of your expenses, where you have spent money historically. So maybe take a look back at the last 12 months and then really plan ahead to where you're going to spend money over the course of the next year. Even if you're maintaining a budget currently, now is a great time to revisit that. Things change. Taxes change at the beginning of every year, so maybe your take-home pay is slightly different than it was before. Could be a little less, could be a little bit more. Your contributions to your retirement accounts can change at the beginning of the year. So beginning of the year is a great time to really kind of take a look at everything that you're spending money on.
And with inflation, prices have been going up, so you kind of need to adjust that in your budget. Yeah,
absolutely. Prices change. Groceries continue to go up. Auto expenses continue to go up. So being able to just take note of everything that you're doing and adjusting for that for the year ahead is a great time to do that.
What do you suggest for people? Because I know there's a lot of apps and stuff out there that kind of make budgeting easier. Is there a certain app or a way to set the budget that you suggest to people?
So I'm actually somewhat partial to our own products. So we just launched a new digital banking platform at Coastal. And within our digital banking, we've got a number of budgeting tools built in. So there is a budgeting module that will allow you to really set your spending goals and your income numbers for each month and help you forecast out where all that money is going. There is a spend analysis tool. So it'll actually show you where by category all of your money is being spent. And it's a look back, but it's useful information to have as you start to plan ahead. We also have a cash flow tool, which shows you your trend over the last year of where months that you've spent more or months that you've saved more. and really helps you kind of gauge where all your money, not where your money is going, but how much of your money is flowing in one direction or another. And then there's just the overall budgeting tool that we use. There's online tools that you can use. There's a lot of them. I wouldn't even name them all. And I'm somewhat partial to even just sitting down with an Excel spreadsheet and plugging in the information
Old
there.
school.
And it's like, for me, it's it's just a way for me to get the whole big picture. I can see all my categories month over month. I can really track where everything is, and I will sit down every month and just put everything into a spreadsheet and do it that way. But regardless of how it works for people, you can do it in a notebook, write it down, pen and paper. The
If you're
important
good
thing
at
is
keeping up with, writing everything down that's also coming out that you're spending,
And
to see if you're balancing your budget.
that's a big challenge for people, but that's often the most eye-opening thing. At the end of the day,
I'm
budgeting
sure.
is just
Yeah.
the end of the day, budgeting is just numbers, right? There's not much to it. It's the emotional side of it. All of those numbers are decisions you made, whether it's a decision in the past or it's a decision looking forward.
We don't like to talk about that, Joe.
I know.
My husband
I
will
know,
send
that's the
me,
hard part.
Yeah, he is the big budgeter in our family, and he'll send me screenshots of things, and I'm like, do we need to talk about that right now? Can we kick the can down the road? And no, he does not like to kick the can down the road, but he definitely finds budgets to be very important. And I'll mention Dave Ramsey just because that's a program that I listen to on the radio at night if I'm in the car at night. And I know they use something called Every Dollar. I think it's called the Every Dollar app or something. And that's also a budget that you have to be diligent about putting in exactly what you spend, which I feel like I'm not going to be very good at, but I can try.
And there's a bunch of different tools. Like that is one of them. There's You Need a Budget is another one.
Yeah.
What I like about our tools, you can import your other accounts from other institutions. So it can give you that
that's
full
good.
look,
Okay.
and you can link. Yeah, you can link to your other accounts, so it can get a full picture of all of your spending and all of your budgeting, not just what you have with Coastal. So I really like to see that.
Yeah.
And be able to get that big picture.
And that's convenient too, that it's automatically and I'm assuming this is how it would work. If you go to Starbucks, you get a coffee, and you have to apply it to something within your budget because it's showing up in the account. So they want you to put it somewhere, right? Is that kind of how it works?
It'll categorize it.
Yeah.
So it can go, but usually based off of, especially if you're doing it by a credit card or a debit card, it's going to categorize it by what the merchant codes are. So every place that accepts debit or credit cards has a code that they send back to the processors, Visa or MasterCard, and that tells them what kind of business they are.
Okay.
So it can read that information and categorize it for you.
We're in 2026 now. Everything is so much smarter than I am. So anything that would make that process easier and just automatically do it for me would be very helpful.
And that's actually one of the points I love about budgeting is automating things.
Yeah.
I don't think I talk about that enough, and that's one of my favorite things is, direct deposit is one way to do it. You put the money where you want it to go, but also set up automatic transfers, set up automatic payments to your different billers. And the more you can kind of set it, not really forget it, but set it and make sure it's happening every month for you, the less you have to manage. And then budgeting becomes a lot easier because it's repeatable and it's predictable.
Yeah. And they say it takes 2 weeks to form a habit. So stick to this for a couple weeks, and then hopefully you'll be so used to it that it's just second nature. All right, tip number 2 is to start or maintain your emergency fund. I'd love for you to talk to us about what constitutes an emergency fund, what should it be used for, and why is having one important?
So at its core, an emergency fund is literally that money you're setting aside for the unknown, the unpredictable. Things are going to happen.
So like car breaks down.
That's a great one. Cars need repairs. Stuff breaks. People get sick. People get injured. Pets get sick.
True.
So there are things that will happen in your life that it's tough to budget for, but it's nice to have that money set aside. That's money you're going to put aside into a separate savings account. You're not looking to make a high return on that. You're not looking to invest it. That's money that you want set aside for if and when something happens and you need to pay for that. You don't want to take that out of your monthly budget, right? Your monthly spending, your monthly bills. You want to have something set aside for those emergencies. And there's different ways to look at it. At the core, they say people should have $400 or $1,000 set aside. Those are kind of your typical emergencies that you might run into, fall in that range. But looking further ahead, conventional wisdom or advice that I've heard and advice that I've followed is 3 months or 6 months of your expenses. And that could be at its core, could just be your cover what you need to cover your bills, to all the way up to like what's your full monthly spend, and set that aside.
Because if you have an accident or something catastrophic happens, you need to be able to still pay your bills. So we're not just talking about if your heating and air conditioning goes out and having a plan for that. It's really, what if something truly bad happens and you need to be able to pay your bills?
True. Yeah, it could be you're unable to work. It could be you're out of work. If you're
you lose your job. That's a good point too.
And it could be one or both people in a household. So there's a lot of different things that could constitute an emergency, and a lot of different ways that you're going to want to be able to cover it. But at the basic is you're going to want to set aside that money and keep it separate from everything else.
So how do we include this part in our budgeting? Should there be a certain percentage of our paychecks each month that maybe we should have a budget line item that goes straight to the emergency fund, do you think?
If somebody doesn't have an emergency fund, I would tell them that's their top priority, is getting that established. Set aside something from every paycheck until they hit that $400 or they've hit that $1,000, and then adjusting from there and saying, okay, well, maybe you're going to set aside $100 a paycheck until you get up to 3 months of expenses, or whatever amount kind of fits into your plan. When you're budgeting, you need to look at, there's a concept called pay yourself first, and that's funding your retirement, paying down your debt, but also establishing that emergency fund. And when you're creating your budget, that's a bucket of spend that you need to look at before you look at everything else. So it's, you establish those things, then you budget for your bills, and then you have your spending money set aside. So your emergency fund would fall into that first bucket.
So speaking of paying yourself first and retirement plans, that's tip number 3. Reassess your retirement plans and goals. So why is January a good time to start rethinking about retirement plans?
One of the biggest reasons is contribution limits change in January.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, every year, you hit the start of a new year, the IRS puts out new guidelines for what the contribution limits are. So if you're somebody who is contributing a lot toward your retirement, this is the time of year that you would want to adjust that. Or if you've hit a milestone, so like I'm going to turn 50 this year, I can contribute more to my 401k and I could contribute more to my IRA. So I'm going to want to be mindful of that.
January is a great time
to realize that.
Based on age, you could start contributing more.
Yeah,
it makes sense, but I didn't realize that.
There are catch-up contributions that you're able to do when you hit certain ages, and it varies by the type of accounts that there are, but 50 is one of those milestone years where you can start to contribute a little bit more to those accounts. I always recommend to people that if they're contributing to their employer's 401k plan, they want to, at the minimum, take advantage of whatever matching program that their employer offers. So if their employer matches 5% or 6%, that's what you want to start at. You want to be doing at least 5 or 6%.
Because that's tax-free money, right? Out of your paycheck.
And typically you're not going to make that up somewhere else. So if you put in 5% and they put in 5%, now you've put aside 10% of your income, and it's tax advantaged, but also that extra 5% that they've put in there is, it's like you've doubled your money that year.
So, how do you like your urgent care? At Wake Med, we have urgent care just about everywhere. Urgent care that specializes in orthopedics and kids. My Care 365, open every day of the year. Even virtual urgent care. Yup, urgent care in your jammies on your tablet. So download the Wake Med All Access app and get urgent care that's caring, convenient, and just the way you like it.
Welcome to Podcast Carry, professional podcast studios with more than 50 shows making podcasting simple and fun. It starts right on our website. Pick a time that fits your schedule, tell us what you're working on, and we'll take care of the rest. You focus on the conversation. We handle everything else. Because starting a podcast should be fun, not complicated. Come see how easy it can be at podcastcarry.com.
So speak to, say, a 22-year-old fresh out of college. Should they start investing in a retirement plan that young? I mean, I would say the answer is yes.
I would always say if they're working, period. So whether you're fresh out of college in a full-time job or you're working part-time while you're going to school and that employer has a plan available to you, always contribute to it because you can't make up time.
Yeah.
And in investing, especially in a tax-advantaged account like a 401k or an IRA or even a health savings account, the time that you put into it is the advantage of it because that money compounds over time, and to not be paying taxes on that or to just not touching that money for 30, 40 years, it just compounds over time. And that's where you really come out ahead when you're getting to retirement age.
Even though I know and I've been there, it feels like you really need that money. But now that I'm getting older, I look back and I'm so blessed that I married somebody that thought about those things when we were in our younger 20s, because now we can see the benefits, because it really does snowball over time. And you look at the accounts and go, wow, I'm glad we did that at, starting a young age. Now let's talk about the people that are in their 50s or 60s and perhaps not started a retirement fund. Is it too late to start a retirement fund, or do you think these people should possibly pivot in another direction and start investing in another way?
I don't think it's ever too late to start to contribute to a retirement fund. If you're talking about somebody who's closer to retirement age, though, they may have different needs, different goals, and different abilities to contribute. And this is the part where I'm going to throw in my disclaimer that I'm not a financial advisor.
Oh, yes. Very good point,
So,
folks. He is not an advisor.
So everyone's goals,
He's just a
needs,
smart
situations differ. Yeah, your goals, your needs, your situations differ. I do recommend always talking to somebody who is a certified financial advisor.
Especially
for
for something
things.
like this, because you want to be very smart and intentional if you're, at the point that you're thinking, oh no, am I too late?
Yeah. But that's where I'll always turn to our own services at Coastal and say, we've got Coastal Wealth Management. We've got a team of financial advisors who can sit down with somebody and work with them individually and really plan out, not just getting to retirement, but beyond retirement. We get into estate planning and wills and trusts, and those sound like terms for people who've got tens of millions of dollars, but it's really for anybody because you're planning the rest of your future, regardless of what resources you have or what age you're at. So I always recommend sitting down and talking to somebody to really look at the specifics of their plan, especially if they're getting closer to retirement and haven't had a plan the whole way. But the good thing is, if you've got a young enough audience and people who you talked about, the people who are fresh out of college, we've talked about people who are near in retirement, but the people in between, getting there and establishing a good habit to plan for your retirement is something that will help them come out ahead in the end. So we talked about, starting with contributing to your employer's match amount, but then every year as you hit, a new year, you get a raise, you maybe get a new job, a new promotion, increasing that year over year. So if you can add another 1%, another 2%, eventually you get to the point where maybe you are hitting those maximum contributions. And it's become a behavior that is repeatable. You don't really think about it because you've automated the process. And as you go through your career, that really starts to accumulate and is there for you for your future.
Okay, now let's start talking about getting out of debt. Tip number 4 is implement a plan to get out of debt. And January is a great time to create a debt plan, especially after all the shopping at Christmas. What are some helpful tips to help kick off a debt reduction plan?
And this is probably a category that touches the biggest group of people.
Yeah.
You talked, and you mentioned some of the types of debt that are out there. So this is a topic that's probably going to reach the biggest amount of people because there are so many different types of debt out there. There's consumer debt, there's credit cards, there's auto loans. People have mortgages, they may have home equity loans, they may have different types of debt.
Yeah, student loans.
Student loans are a big one for a lot of people. And it seems now later and later into life. But, we go back to that concept of paying yourself first, planning for your retirement. Paying down your debt is a big chunk of that. Especially, if you're talking about consumer loans that, tend to be a little bit smaller dollar amounts, but maybe a bigger chunk of that monthly spend. Making a plan to reduce your balances and ideally get to a place where, like, if you're talking about a credit card, ideally get to a place where you use your card and you pay it off in full every month. So when you're doing your budget, you're going to have to look at those dollar amounts, look at your balances, and really plan a way to get yourself down to a smaller and smaller balance over time. Auto loans are usually a fixed term. Home equity loans are usually a fixed term. Your mortgage, that's usually a fixed amount. You may set a goal to pay those off sooner. And by doing that, you have to look at, okay, what's my monthly payment? And can I pay more toward that every month? Or can I set aside more to make a larger lump sum payment at some point? But that works into your budget. You have to figure out where's my priority? What do I want this money to do for me in the future, in the immediate term? And then where can I plug in a little bit of extra money to make that happen? And focus on one, people usually have a lot of different types of debt. Focus on one at a time. I think you mentioned Dave Ramsey, so he's got the debt snowball.
Yes, exactly.
Where
he does, that's the paying the smallest amount of debt first, right?
That's right.
Because he's saying it's a mental thing. Once you see that you can check that off your list mentally, it makes you want to keep going.
It does, and I actually that's the plan that I followed when I was trying to pay down debt. Is I knocked off the smallest balance first, and then that gives you a little bit more cushion, not just in your monthly budget, but then a little bit more to put towards that next amount. You knock out the next one, now you've got even more to put towards the next amount, and it literally snowballs from there. The other way to look at it, some people like to follow a plan of paying down the highest cost debt first. So you look at the debt that has the largest interest amount or the highest interest amount. Typically, that's going to be a credit card. So actually, when you put those two concepts together, it usually involves tackling your credit card debt first.
Okay.
Because credit card debt tends to be the smallest debt that people have.
Yeah, because largest debt you would think would be mortgage, maybe student loans if you have a lot of student loans. But so, I would think credit card might be the smallest.
Yeah, so for some people, it may be in the middle where your auto loan is the smallest amount, but that's typically a lower interest rate. But either approach is going to work for people. They just need to look at, what's your priority, what mentally is going to work best for you. Do you want to knock out the dollar amounts that you're paying toward interest so that more of your money is going to pay down debt? Or do you just want to knock off the smallest payment or the smallest balances so that you have more to put toward payments on other types of debt?
And then thinking about how, if you're paying a credit card debt and you're paying the minimum balance, you're really just paying the interest because it seems like you're never getting to that principal that you're bringing down your loan amount. So if you pay more than what is owed, it's reaching above that interest, right? Am I kind of
so if you do the minimum
trying to
payment
dump this down a little bit?
Well, if you do the minimum payment, you're not going to pay it down as fast. You are paying a little bit more than the interest, but a big chunk of that is the interest. So
especially with the high interest credit card.
Typically, yeah. And then on every credit card statement, there is information that's required by law to be there. And one of those pieces of information is how long it will take you to pay down your current balance if you only make the minimum payments. And
I'm sure that's a wake-up call.
It could be decades.
Wow.
It could be decades. So, the best practice with credit cards is to use them to make purchases and then pay the balance in full at the end of the month. If you need to carry a balance, you don't want to carry it for an extended period of time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, our final tip, and this is finally a fun one. Thank you for giving us something fun. Have a plan to reward yourself for reaching your financial goals for the year. So what I'm wondering is, reaching your financial goals, does that mean that we have to wait for something fun for once you pay off the debt and you do everything on this list? Or can we still budget somewhere to add a little fun? Vacation or, a spa trip?
So that's one where you if you've started at step 1 and you've created your budget, that could be one of your line items.
Okay.
Is, what's your fun budget? What's your vacation budget? Call it what you will.
This is when Dave Ramsey might slap you because I don't think he would agree. I think Dave says no fun at all until all your debt is paid off. And I just feel like that's the one thing that he says to me that sounds great on paper, but when you don't give yourself little treats, little nuggets here and there, I feel like you would backslide. So your point is, as long as it's in the budget and you can afford it out of your paycheck and it's in the budget, then go for it.
I'm gonna disagree with Dave on that. You need to have a little bit of balance in your life, and that can vary. You could scale that up. To some people, if you're really focused on trying to pay down debt, or you're really focused on trying to save for your future, establish your emergency fund, that fund might mean going to a movie or going bowling.
Okay.
But you've set aside the money to do it. You've set aside the money to do that. Yeah. It could be, it could be going and playing mini golf with the kids. Or it could scale up to, a vacation. It doesn't need to be a 2-week international trip. Maybe you do a weekend in the mountains or at the beach.
Yeah.
So all of it scales. I think if you've got that carved out in your budget, though, and you've made a plan for it, it doesn't become debt. It doesn't become a hardship. It doesn't become a strain. You just plan for it, and then you stick within the budget for that particular thing.
So do you think that in terms of the budget, this should be the last thing you add to the budget is the little fun category?
I would make it last. Definitely last.
It sounds like it should be, but I do say it definitely should be in there somewhere.
I think it absolutely needs to be in there.
What is life if you're not having something fun to look forward to?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of ways to budget for that.
Good point. Okay, that's a wrap on our New Year's money makeover. Thank you, Joe, for helping us make sense of this year's financial resolutions. I appreciate it.
I love the puns. I love the puns.
You've come to the right place then. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, perfect.
Thanks for listening to What's Up Wake with Melissa Wistahuff, presented by the publishers of Carey Magazine, Wake Living, and Main and Broad. Follow them on social media at Carey Magazine NC, at MB Magazine NC, and at Wake Living Magazine. Visit each magazine's website at careymagazine.com, mainandbroadmag.com, and wakeliving.com to check out the latest digital edition of each magazine and find pickup locations. Be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review to help others find us. Music provided by Angie Bagley and Chris Bagley. This show is produced by Podcast Carey.